At the burial of his estranged father, Daniel Reed hears a chilling whisper from his older half-brother, Marcus, "Your wife will enjoy that money." The words are laced with venom, and the smug grin Marcus wears suggests a final victory in their long-standing family feud. Daniel, blindsided and grief-stricken, suspects that Marcus manipulated their father's final days and possibly the contents of his will. But what Marcus doesn't know is that 2 weeks before their father's death, Daniel received a visit. That changed everything, a late-night confession and a sealed envelope from their father, containing a second will, unregistered, unsigned, but devastatingly revealing. As Daniel digs deeper into his father's business empire, he uncovers secrets buried for decades, affairs, betrayals, a mysterious offshore account, and a connection between Marcus and Daniel's wife that goes far beyond business. This is a story of legacy and deception, where every truth uncovered leads to a darker revelation, and the battle over inheritance becomes a war of identities, lies, and ultimate justice. It started with a whisper. The cemetery was quiet except for the soft murmur of wind through the pines and the occasional sound of a shoe shifting on wet grass. Daniel Reed stood beside his father's casket, staring blankly at the polished wood as the priest droned on. The scent of lilies and damp soil hung in the air, heavy and invasive. Then, just as the final prayer faded, Marcus leaned in, close enough that Daniel could feel the heat of his breath. "Your wife will enjoy that money," he whispered, and then he was gone, stepping back with the rest of the mourners, his face a picture of serene composure. But the damage was done. The words lodged themselves in Daniel's chest like a shard of glass. He turned slowly, his eyes finding Marcus through the sea of black coats and bowed heads. That smug little smile was still there. It was the kind of smile you wear when you know something no one else does. Daniel's grip tightened around the umbrella in his hand. Rain was starting to fall again, light and insistent. But his mind was already somewhere else, flashing back to the phone call 3 weeks earlier. His father's voice, raspy and hesitant. "I need to see you. Alone." They hadn't spoken in nearly a year. Not after the last blowout, the one where Daniel had accused him of favoring Marcus, of rewriting the company's future to suit his golden child. Still, something in the old man's tone had pierced through Daniel's stubborn pride. He had gone. What he found that night wasn't a father seeking forgiveness. It was a dying man haunted by mistakes and secrets. His father's study smelled of scotch and regret. The fireplace was lit, casting shadows on the shelves lined with legal books and antique clocks. On the table between them sat a sealed envelope. "I made a mistake," his father had said, fingers trembling as he slid the envelope across the table. "That first will, it was written in anger. I thought I had more time to fix things. I was wrong." Daniel had stared at the envelope for a long time, unsure if he should open it. "I haven't signed it yet," his father continued, "but it's the truth. Everything is in there. I trust you'll do what's right." 2 weeks later, his father was dead. A heart attack, they said. Peaceful, no foul play, no questions asked. And now Marcus was whispering poison at the graveside, confident and cold. What did he know? What had he done? As the mourners began to disperse, Daniel moved through them like a ghost, nodding absently at distant cousins and old friends offering condolences. He didn't stop walking until he reached the car. Inside, he closed the door and sat still for a long moment, the envelope in his jacket feeling heavier than ever. He hadn't opened it yet. Why? Maybe because part of him was afraid of what it might say. Maybe because if it truly did change everything, then his life as he knew it, his marriage, his family, his inheritance would crack wide open. But now, with Marcus's words ringing in his ears, he knew there was no going back. He took out the envelope, held it, turned it over in his hands. His father's handwriting on the seal. No stamp, no lawyer's seal, just ink and weight. He opened it. Inside, a typewritten will, dated, detailed, unmistakably different from the one Marcus had submitted to the estate lawyer last week. In this version, everything the company, the estate, the offshore account, split between Daniel and a name he didn't recognize. Someone called Julia Hart. Not Marcus. No mention of Marcus anywhere. And beneath the will, a single sheet of handwritten notes. "Julia is the only one who knows the truth about Marcus. If something happens to me, find her. She'll tell you everything." Daniel stared at the page, heart pounding. Rain beat harder against the windshield. Outside, Marcus was laughing with a group of men near the gravesite, completely unaware that his carefully staged victory was already unraveling. Inside the car, Daniel made a decision. He would find Julia Hart. And he would find out exactly what Marcus had done to their father. End of chapter. Pronto para o capítulo 2. Deseja fazer alguma mudança no estilo ou continuar nesse ritmo? Daniel sat at his father's old desk that evening, the envelope now lying open beside a whiskey glass he hadn't touched. The second will was spread before him, illuminated by the amber desk lamp. His eyes kept returning to the name, Julia Hart, typed clearly, no middle name, no address, no title, just a name placed like a grenade in the center of his father's final intentions. Who the hell was she? He rifled through the handwritten notes again, hoping for more, something beyond the cryptic instruction to find her. The paper was aged, his father's cursive, neat but urgent. A few sentences stood out. She has the recordings. Don't trust the official story. Marcus lied about the clinic. Daniel read it 3 times. Recordings. A clinic. The details made no sense, but the tone was unmistakable. Fear. This wasn't just about inheritance. Something had scared his father into secrecy. He needed to know more. He went upstairs to the storage room, the one place in the house his wife rarely entered. He and his father hadn't been close in recent years, but Daniel had never thrown away the past. Boxes labeled by year sat stacked on metal shelves, dusty and forgotten. He found the one marked 2006 and pulled it down, coughing as he opened the flaps. Photographs, files, receipts, newspaper clippings, and then, there she was. A photo slipped loose from the pile. A woman in her late 30s, maybe early 40s, standing beside his father at what looked like a corporate gala. Her smile was careful, almost practiced. Shoulder-length hair, dark blazer, hand resting lightly on his father's arm. On the back, in faint ink, Julia, Finance Division, 2005. Daniel stared at it, the silence of the house wrapping around him. This woman wasn't a stranger to his father. She'd been close, maybe even trusted. But why had she disappeared? And why wasn't she mentioned anywhere else? He picked up his phone and typed her name into a search engine. Dozens of Julia Harts. Teachers, authors, dentists. But none matched the face in the photograph. He added the keywords, Finance, 2005, Reed Corporation. One result. A PDF of an old company newsletter archived on a legal website. A blurry image, but unmistakable. Julia Hart, head of financial compliance at Reed Corp. Promoted, praised, and then a line that made Daniel pause. Resigned abruptly following internal audit. November 2006. He sat back, stunned. He remembered that audit. Marcus had handled it personally, claimed it was a routine cleanup after a failed expansion. Their father had said little at the time, only that it was handled quietly. But Daniel had never asked questions. He'd been too busy salvaging his own division. Julia had been erased. He scrolled further and found nothing else. No LinkedIn, no other articles, no social media. It was like she had vanished. Daniel knew what that meant. She didn't want to be found, but he had to try. The next morning, he drove to the downtown law office handling the estate. Marcus was already there, sitting across from the family attorney, looking like he owned the place. His suit was tailored. His watch gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Daniel, Marcus said, standing slowly, didn't expect you to come? Everything's already in motion. I'm not here to fight, Daniel lied, stepping inside. Just wanted to review some documents myself. The attorney, Mr. Levins, looked up from his file. We're finalizing the transfer of assets. If you want copies, I can. Daniel cut him off. Actually, I'd like to contest the will. Silence. Marcus blinked once. On what grounds? Daniel reached into his coat and placed the second will on the table. Marcus's face didn't change, but Daniel noticed his left hand curl into a slow fist. Levins adjusted his glasses, lifting the document. This isn't registered. It's unsigned, but authentic, Daniel said. It includes information not available to anyone else. My father gave it to me directly. Marcus leaned forward. You'll ruin everything dragging this through court. You whispered something to me at the burial, Daniel said, eyes locked on him. Let's not pretend you're playing clean. Levins cleared his throat. Gentlemen, if there's another version of the will, this changes things. We'll need to pause proceedings. Possibly open an investigation. Marcus stood, jaw clenched. You're making a mistake. No, Daniel replied calmly. You did. And I think Julia Hart knows exactly what it was. Marcus froze, and, for the first time, Daniel saw it, not anger, not arrogance, but fear. Just a flicker. But it was enough. As Marcus stormed out, Daniel knew he was finally on the right trail. Now he just had to find the woman his father trusted more than his own blood. End of Chapter 2. Posso seguir com o capítulo 3? Deseja manter esse ritmo, ou ajustar algum elemento da narrativa? The last time Daniel had driven this stretch of road, he was 17 and furious. It was the summer his mother left, the summer his father took Marcus on a month-long business trip and left Daniel behind with nothing but silence and excuses. Now, nearly 2 decades later, the past was no longer a faded ache, it was becoming a blueprint for betrayal. Julia Hart had vanished in 2006. After a scandalous internal audit, but the second will and his father's final notes hinted at something far more disturbing than financial misconduct. A line had stood out since he first read it. Marcus lied about the clinic. Daniel had searched for clinics associated with the Reed Corporation, cross-referenced charity donations, even pulled archived financial records from the company's old servers. One name came up repeatedly: Pine Grove Wellness Initiative, a clinic supposedly built and funded by the Reed family to offer mental health services to underserved communities. Except it didn't exist. There were press releases, ribbon photos, smiling faces beside blueprints, but no physical address. No operational records. No patients. Just a name and a story, repeated often enough to pass as truth. Julia had been the one overseeing the fund allocation for that project. If something had gone wrong or been covered up, she would have known. Daniel sat in his car outside the old Reed Corp. Warehouse, one of the properties decommissioned after the 2008 financial crash. He hadn't been here in years. The building was rusting and empty, windows dark and boarded. But his father's notes had led him here. A scribbled line referencing Pine Grove files moved to storage, 18B. Inside, the air was stale and thick with dust. He moved cautiously, flashlight in one hand, the other brushing past hanging wires and shattered glass. The storage room was in the back, behind a heavy steel door marked Archive. It was unlocked. Inside, rows of metal shelves loomed in the dim light. Boxes stacked to the ceiling, some torn open, others still sealed with brittle tape. He searched row 18, shelf B. There it was, a box labeled PG Finance 2006. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside, neatly arranged folders, spreadsheets, memos, internal emails printed and highlighted. A detailed breakdown of accounts showing money being funneled to shell corporations and fake contractors. One memo, unsigned, read. Julia flagged the inconsistencies, told her to keep quiet. Marcus says it'll blow over. And then he found it. A flash drive. It was tucked inside a manila envelope with Julia's name on the outside. No return address, no date, just her name in black marker. Daniel took it and left. Back home, he inserted the drive into his laptop. A folder labeled Insurance. Inside, 5 audio recordings. He played the first. Julia's voice clear, measured, tired. If anything happens to me, this is my record. Reed Corporation was laundering money through Pine Grove. There is no clinic. It was never built. Marcus orchestrated the entire operation. I confronted him. He told me to disappear. That no one would believe me anyway. He's already threatened me twice. Said my career would be over if I didn't comply. Daniel paused the audio, breath caught in his throat. The second file was shorter. A phone call. Marcus's voice. Cold, arrogant. You think you're some kind of moral compass, Julia. Let me remind you, you're not clean either. You signed off on some of those transfers. Don't forget that. If this leaks, you go down with me. The third recording was different. A voicemail, his father's voice. Julia, I've read everything. I'm sorry, I didn't know the full extent. I should have listened. If you're still willing to talk, meet me at the lake house Sunday. I'll bring the new will. Daniel's pulse thundered. The lake house was where his father had gone the week before he died. Marcus had told everyone it was for rest. A quiet getaway, but now Daniel saw it differently. His father had planned to meet Julia to sign the second will, to make things right, and then he died. Daniel didn't believe in coincidence anymore. The final recording was short. Julia, again. I'm leaving the country. I don't feel safe anymore. If you're hearing this, it means something happened. Marcus won't let this go public. And if Daniel ever finds this, tell him, I never wanted this to happen. I wanted the truth, not revenge. Daniel sat in silence. He had everything he needed to expose Marcus, but no idea where Julia was now. If she was still alive. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging. Next time, I won't just whisper. He stared at the screen. Marcus knew, and he was getting desperate. End of chapter 3. Deseja que eu continue com o capítulo 4 no mesmo tom? Algum ajuste desejado, antes de prosseguirmos? The message haunted him. Stop digging. Next time, I won't just whisper. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. 1. Marcus didn't need to sign. Daniel knew his brother's venom all too well. The text arrived less than an hour after he played the last recording. That meant Marcus either had someone watching him, or had access to his father's encrypted files. Neither option gave Daniel any comfort. He couldn't stay home. Not now. He packed a duffel bag with documents, the flash drive, and the original envelope. He left a copy of everything in a safety deposit box that same night. Then he got in his car and drove, with no clear destination, just the growing sense that if he stayed in one place too long, something irreversible would happen. He thought of Julia's voice on the recordings, measured, but heavy. This was a woman who had run, not out of fear alone, but out of conviction. She knew Marcus wouldn't just bury her professionally. She had left for her life. He needed someone who had known her before she vanished. Which brought him to a retired executive named Thomas Layton. Layton had been CFO of Reed Corporation until 2007. When he resigned suddenly after the Pinegrove scandal began surfacing, Daniel had always liked him quiet, meticulous, and fiercely ethical. If anyone had protected Julia during those final months, it would have been him. Daniel found Layton in a modest house outside Charleston. The man looked older than he remembered, hair entirely gray now, but his eyes remained sharp. "You've got 5 minutes," Layton said after Daniel introduced himself. Daniel handed him a printout of the second will. Layton read it without a word, then handed it back. "I figured something like this existed," he muttered. "Your father hinted as much. Never got the courage to confront Marcus, so you knew." "I knew something stunk." But the board had turned to Marcus by then. He had charm, presence, youth. Your father grew tired, isolated. After Julia left, it was just a matter of time. Daniel pulled out the photo. "Do you know where she went?" Layton looked at it and exhaled slowly. Her name wasn't Julia Hart. That was a protective identity. Real name, Alina Marquez. She used it during internal audits, cases that involved serious fraud. It was your father's idea. He brought her in to clean up quietly. She found more than he expected. Daniel froze. So she was undercover. Layton nodded. Essentially, freelanced for compliance agencies. The minute Marcus realized who she really was, he made her a target. Not just professionally. She received threats, had her car tampered with. There was even a break-in at her apartment. Nothing stolen, but files were rearranged. Message sent. Daniel leaned back in his chair, stunned. So where did she go? She had safe houses, new names, new lives. "I don't know where she is now, but I know she left a back door open. If you really want to find her, there's a man named Raymond who ran her digital protections. Last I heard, he was in Montreal." Layton stood. "Find her, Daniel. But be prepared, what she has might destroy more than just Marcus. It could ruin the Reed name forever." Daniel drove through the night. He crossed the border at dawn. No calls to his wife. No messages to friends. Only one mission. Find Alina Marquez. Montreal was cold and impersonal. Daniel followed a paper trail of encrypted emails and burner phone contacts until he found Raymond, mid-40s, paranoid, living above a laundromat, and still coding security tools like the world was ending. When Daniel mentioned Alina, the man stiffened. "She's gone," he said. "Disappeared 6 months ago." Dead. Raymond hesitated. "No, just gone. Left instructions. If someone ever came looking and said the word Pinegrove, I was to give them this." He handed Daniel a small encrypted drive and a hand-scrawled address. "She said one day the truth would need to breathe again." Daniel took the items without a word. He returned to the small motel on the outskirts of town. Hooked the drive into his laptop. It asked for a password. He entered Pinegrove. Access granted. A folder opened. Dozens of documents. Names, bank, transfers, hidden accounts. But one folder stood out. Reed family, private inside. Emails between Marcus and a contact listed only as SR, the subject lines chilled. Daniel. About Daniel's wife, pregnancy insurance, keep her Quiet, he clicked one open. Marcus's voice, in text. She thinks I love her. Keep it that way until the will is finalized. After that, she can go. Daniel stared at the screen, hand frozen over the trackpad. He read it again, and again. Then he clicked open a file labeled Photos. The first image loaded. Marcus, laughing, holding a champagne flute. Beside him, Daniel's wife, smiling, pregnant. End of chapter 4. Quer que eu siga com o capítulo 5 agora? Deseja manter esse ritmo, ou inserir novos elementos emocionais ou narrativos? He stared at the screen for so long. The motel lights outside changed from dusk to night. The photo didn't change. Marcus, grinning like the world was his. His arm around her shoulders, her face tilted toward him, not in fear or tension but in ease, familiarity, maybe even affection. She looked radiant, and visibly pregnant. Daniel couldn't breathe. He clicked to the next image. Then the next. A sequence of them, his wife and Marcus, together at different locations. Some professional, like fundraisers or board meetings, others private. A seaside resort. A quiet dinner in New York. A blurred image of them entering the same hotel lobby just after midnight. He felt hollow, like his organs had dropped out of his body, and only bone remained. Her name was Claire. They'd met 6 years ago at a charity gala his father insisted he attend. She was bright, warm, with the kind of attention to detail Daniel had always lacked. Within months, they were inseparable. She knew how to steady him, how to make the chaos of Reed Corp. And his fractured family feel like background noise. He had loved her like a fool. The emails on the drive were damning. Marcus wasn't just having an affair with Claire. He had orchestrated it, manipulated her into the inner circle. There were messages with time-stamped instructions. Wear the red dress. Daniel always lets his guard down when she does. Bring up his mother's abandonment tides, his weak point. Delay the pregnancy talk until I confirm the will is still valid. Daniel scrolled until he couldn't anymore. He shut the laptop. His hands were trembling. The child wasn't his. All this time, while he'd been unraveling the financial betrayal, he'd failed to see the one happening right beside him. In his bed, in his house. He picked up his phone and dialed her number. No answer. He called again. Voicemail. He drove. The flight back to New York was a blur. He barely registered. The security checks, the seatbelt sign, the buzz of the plane engine. All he could see was that photo of her smiling next to Marcus. Pregnant, complicit, or worse, cornered and used. He didn't know which version hurt more. When he arrived home, the house was silent. Claire's car was in the driveway. Lights were off inside. He opened the door. She was in the kitchen, back turned, pouring tea like nothing was wrong. She didn't hear him at first, or pretended not to. Then she turned. Their eyes met. She froze. He didn't speak. Daniel, she said softly, setting the cup down. You're home early. He took a step forward. I know. Silence. She didn't ask what he meant. That told him everything. I saw the photos, the emails, the pregnancy reports. I know it's Marcus's. Claire's lip trembled, but she didn't deny it. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she said, her voice breaking. He said you'd never find out. That he just needed my help for a while. That your father wanted you removed from the company, and I could help ease the transition by sleeping with my brother. She flinched. It wasn't like that in the beginning. I didn't even know who he was when we first met. I thought he was a consultant. By the time I realized who he really was, I was already in too deep. You could have told me. He said he'd ruin you if I did. He said he had footage of your breakdown in 2019, that he'd use it to get you declared unfit to inherit anything. Daniel's mind raced back. The medication, the therapist, the night he'd nearly driven off the bridge. He had told no one, not even Claire. But somehow, Marcus had known. He sat down, the weight of it all crushing. So what now? You raise his child in my home. Wait until the estate clears and vanish with your real family. Tears streamed down her face. I was going to tell you. After the will was settled. I was going to leave. I didn't want to lie anymore. You already did. Claire knelt in front of him. He used me. Just like he used Julia. Just like he used your father. You think I'm the only one who got pulled into this? He made me sign documents I didn't understand. He had leverage over everyone. Daniel stood. Then you'd better start remembering exactly what you signed. Because if you want redemption, you're going to help me end this. Her eyes widened. End it how? He opened the duffel bag, pulled out the second will, the recordings, the financial logs. We go public. We burn it all down. Claire looked at the documents like they might explode in her hands. There's one more thing, Daniel added. Julia Lanish is alive. Somewhere, and she left a final message. He played the last file again. Julia's voice filled the room. If Daniel ever finds this, tell him the final piece is with the man in Berlin. The one who knows what Marcus did in Geneva. Claire looked up slowly, her expression changed. What? I know who that is, she said. Daniel locked eyes with her, and just like that, the war for the Reed legacy shifted continents. Berlin in November was cold, gray, and unwelcoming. Daniel hadn't been back since his father's expansion talks with the European Board nearly a decade earlier. He remembered little from that trip, just a tense dinner with Marcus and a strange comment from a German executive that stuck with him. Even now, your brother knows how to disappear things. Claire traveled with him. Their arrangement was fragile. Not forgiveness, not yet, but necessity. She had information. She wanted protection. And maybe, somewhere beneath the wreckage, she wanted to make things right. The man they were looking for was named Sebastian Roth, a name Daniel hadn't heard in years. But as soon as Julia's recording mentioned Geneva, Claire recognized it. Sebastian was the head of the Reed Europa compliance team in 2011, she told Daniel on the flight. He and Marcus were close to close. There was a scandal brewing in Switzerland back then. I never saw the files, but Marcus was obsessed with controlling whatever Roth had. They tracked Sebastian to a bookstore cafe in Kreuzberg, a quiet corner of Berlin where expats went to be forgotten. He was older now. With a limp Daniel didn't remember. He recognized them instantly. You shouldn't be here, Sebastian said without greeting. His English was precise, his tone clipped. If Marcus finds out, he already knows. Daniel interrupted. He's been trying to silence us since the funeral. You're the last person left in this story who hasn't disappeared, vanished, or ended up dead. Sebastian's jaw clenched. I'm not here to relive ghosts. Claire leaned forward. Julia's alive. That stopped him. He looked at her, then at Daniel. Prove it. Daniel placed the flash drive on the table, along with a printed transcript of Julia's final message. Sebastian read silently for a full minute, then exhaled. She was supposed to be gone. He told me she left for good. That she wouldn't be a problem. She was a problem, Daniel said coldly, because she had proof. Sebastian shook his head. You don't understand what Geneva was. It wasn't just fraud. Marcus orchestrated a human asset swap. Claire stiffened. What do you mean? Sebastian hesitated. The Geneva accounts offshore shelters disguised as medical research subsidiaries were tied to immigration records. Citizenship laundering, they called it. Wealthy clients bought European residency through fake medical trials. Reed Corp helped move the money, launder the documentation, and bury the patient lists. Daniel's stomach turned. And Julia found out. She did more than that, Sebastian said. She copied everything, including emails Marcus sent authorizing the swaps. He threatened her family. Threatened me. Where's the proof? Daniel asked. Sebastian nodded slowly. There's a vault. I made a copy of everything Julia sent me. I was too afraid to use it, but I kept it just in case. He reached under the cafe table, pulled out a worn key, and placed it in Daniel's palm. Bank Firth, private security box, 312. Use it before he does. That night, they broke into a private banking facility using borrowed access and forged credentials Claire had acquired from one of Marcus's old assistants, who'd happily flipped when promised immunity. Inside box 312, they found a black folder labeled Echogenesis. The contents were horrifying. Names of undocumented patients, forged immigration slips, financial transfers to known corrupt officials, and most amnesia signed letter from Marcus Reed authorizing the destruction of backup records, dated 3 days before Julia's disappearance. Claire trembled. He bought silence. With people, there was more. A second envelope. Photos. Marcus with a man in a Geneva alleyway passing an envelope. The timestamp matched the week their father supposedly had business meetings in Zurich. Daniel looked closer. The man Marcus met with was the same man who officiated at their father's funeral. A priest. He flipped the photo. Scribbled in German. He gave the morphine himself. Daniel felt the ground tilt. Claire whispered, "Your father didn't die of a heart attack." Daniel closed his eyes, trying to breathe. His father had been murdered. Not out of hatred but to seal the silence. The weight of the truth was heavier than Daniel could have imagined. Not only had Marcus orchestrated years of fraud, manipulation, and blackmail, he had, in all likelihood, engineered their father's death, not with a gun or violence, but with morphine, faith, and a quiet lie about peace, and the man who'd administered it, the one who'd whispered prayers over their father's casket, was no priest at all. The funeral had been theater. A closing act to a legacy Marcus never earned, but had always planned to steal. Daniel sat in the back of the Berlin hotel room, documents spread out like weapons. Claire stood by the window, phone to her ear, whispering in French to a contact she hadn't spoken to in years. She had burned every bridge in Marcus's camp. There was no turning back now. Sebastian had vanished hours after giving them the key. Whether out of fear or strategy, Daniel didn't know. But the message was clear. Time was running out. They had evidence. Enough to destroy Marcus and possibly Reed Corporation with him. The question was, how? Daniel's first instinct was court. But legal channels meant delays. Bureaucracy. Marcus's reach was long, his legal team aggressive. No, this needed daylight, noise, spectacle, something Marcus couldn't snuff out with threats. And settlements. Claire hung up. I have a contact at a major broadcast network. She owes me, she said. If we go to her with this, she'll run it. But we need to be public before Marcus spins his own version. Daniel nodded. We do it tomorrow, live unedited, every piece of it. Claire hesitated. Once we do this, there's no undoing it. You're not just taking down your brother, you're taking down your family's name, the company, everything tied to it. Daniel looked at the photo again, Marcus passing the envelope to the fake priest, and then the one beside it, his wife, pregnant, smiling at a man she once said she feared. I'm not destroying anything, he said. I'm exposing what's already rotten. That night, they didn't sleep. They uploaded the full contents of the Geneva folder to multiple cloud backups. They sent anonymized drops to 4 independent journalists. They recorded a joint statement, Daniel in the foreground, Claire beside him, reading from a script neither of them needed. They told the story, the fake clinic, the bribery, the immigration scam, the forged will, and the circumstances surrounding their father's death. And they named names. Marcus Reed, the so-called priest, revealed to be a private palliative care specialist with a record of off-the-books end-of-life consulting. They ended the video with Julia's final voice message. If this is reaching you, then the cost of silence has become too high. The file was scheduled for automatic release at 10 a.m. local time, simultaneously in New York, Berlin, and London. They arrived at the broadcast studio early. The producer, an old colleague of Claire's, looked nervous but impressed. You two realize this is suicide for your careers, right? She said. Daniel smiled without humor. That assumes we have careers to protect. The segment was slotted into a prime investigative news hour. The host had read every document. No one pulled punches. The broadcast began. Daniel sat under bright lights, looking directly into the camera. My name is Daniel Reed. I am the son of Richard Reed, founder of Reed Corporation. And what I'm about to share is going to shatter everything you think you know about our family. For the next 12 minutes, the world listened to the scandal, to the betrayal, to the betrayal, to the murder. And then Claire spoke. Not as the wife who had betrayed her husband, but as the woman who had survived Marcus's manipulation, intimidation, and control. Her voice cracked only once, when she said, I thought I could manage the damage. I was wrong. The screen cut to photos, documents, the Geneva transactions, the letter authorizing the destruction of patient records, the photo of Marcus at the gravesite. Smiling, Daniel ended the segment. My father didn't die of natural causes. He was silenced, and now, finally, he can be heard. The feed ended. The silence in the studio was thick. Then the phones started ringing. Within minutes, the segment had gone viral. News agencies picked it up. #ReedTruth trended globally. Former Reed Corporation employees came forward. Anonymous whistleblowers confirmed the clinic scam. A reporter in Zurich posted an article within the hour. The fake priest had fled his residence. Daniel's phone buzzed. A blocked number, he answered. You've made a mistake. Marcus's voice said calmly. You don't survive a move like this. Daniel didn't flinch. I don't need to survive it, he said. I just need the truth to outlive you. There was a pause. Then Marcus laughed. You think this ends with me? You think I'm the only monster in this story? and then he hung up. Daniel stood there, phone still to his ear, because for the first time, he understood Marcus hadn't run. He was preparing something else. For 2 days, the world turned upside down. News outlets circled like hawks. Stockholders panicked. Reed Corporation's board called an emergency vote. Marcus's name trended worldwide for all the wrong reasons. Photos of Julia, thought long vanished, appeared on screens next to headlines that asked, whistleblower or target. Daniel watched it all unfold from the guest room of a secure townhouse, provided by the news network after anonymous threats were phoned in to the station. Claire stayed close, silent most of the time, knowing her part in this would be debated, dissected, judged. She didn't ask for forgiveness anymore. She helped. She stayed, but Marcus hadn't disappeared. He had resources, allies, and a plan. Daniel knew it the moment he received the subpoena. Marcus was suing. For defamation. For document theft. For manipulation of his late father's estate. A last, desperate lunge to paint Daniel as unstable and vengeful. But what chilled Daniel wasn't the lawsuit, it was the statement Marcus released to the media. Daniel Reed has a long history of mental health struggles. His actions are consistent with delusion, not truth. My father's will was final, and I will not be tried in the court of public opinion. Claire read the words aloud, her voice tight. He's going to flip it, she said. Claim you fabricated the second will. I expected that, Daniel said, but it won't work. He had been preparing for this with the help of independent, forensic experts. Julia's original digital backups were authenticated. Her voice recordings were verified. The financial trails traced cleanly, but even then, it wasn't enough. Marcus was banking on one final card, discrediting Daniel personally, making the public wonder if the pressure had finally broken him. That's when the letter arrived, delivered by hand. No return address. Inside was a single page typed. Clean, it was their father's signature, and it wasn't on a will. It was on a confession. If you are reading this, I am dead. I believe my son, Marcus, has been manipulating assets and individuals within my company for years. I was complicit in the beginning. I allowed him freedom I never gave Daniel. I thought I could control him. I was wrong. This letter is my admission, and I leave it to Daniel to decide what should be done with it. The signature was authenticated by 3 experts. Daniel released it to the press the next day. The trial never happened. Marcus disappeared before the board could vote on his removal. Authorities issued a warrant for his arrest. An offshore account in Belize was frozen. A black car was found abandoned at a private airstrip. He was gone, but justice, however partial, had begun. Julia resurfaced cautiously through legal channels. She gave a televised statement from a remote location. Her face half in shadow, she detailed the years of silence, of moving from city to city, waiting for the moment Marcus would be cornered. I never wanted revenge, she said, only to survive long enough to speak. The Reed Corporation split into pieces. A full audit uncovered even more layers of fraud deals made in South America under false identities. Entire departments built on shell partnerships. The board dissolved the company within 6 months. And Daniel, he refused interviews. He sold the house, moved into a quiet apartment near the coast. Every week, he visited the cemetery. Not out of obligation, but to remember what pride had cost his family. One morning, he found a small envelope tucked between the gravestones. No name. Inside, a photo Claire holding a child, a boy. In the distance behind her, blurred, almost imperceptible, a man watching Marcus. Daniel stared at it for a long time. He turned it over, no message, just a smudge of red ink, a fingerprint. He never showed it to Claire. Some truths, he decided, didn't belong in the headlines. They belonged in silence. He burned the photo that night, and for the first time in months, he slept. Not peacefully, but finally.